Welcome to the 16th episode of the series Decolonizing the Mind. Today I'll talk about the question, what if Israel uses nuclear bombs in this war? This question is on the mind of many people, but we don't talk openly about it because of the horrors it implicates. So, um, yet even difficult questions need to be addressed. And in this episode, I will address this particular question. I'll deal with the purpose of nuclear bombs, the chances that Israel will use nukes, how will it change the course of world history, and is at the beginning of World War III or the end of Israel. What's a nuclear bomb? A nuclear bomb is based on a nuclear reaction that creates an explosion. When the nuclear bomb explodes, it generates a blast wave, intense light, heat, and radiation that could kill hundreds of thousands of people in one blast. It is not detonated by hitting the ground and breaking up, but is detonated by a mechanism inside the bomb that controls the method and moment of explosion. It can be delivered by a plane like in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, or fired by missiles from the ground, or aircraft carrier, or submarines. Israel has 19 warheads, the US 5,500, and Russia over 6,000. So, what's the purpose of having a nuclear bomb? There's only one purpose: deterrence. Because there's no defense possible against a nuclear bomb. So, if you don't give up, we will use nuclear bombs, is what the US said to Japan. And after the first bomb in Hiroshima, the Japanese emperor didn't want to give up. Then they used the second bomb and then he gave up. So that's the purpose of the bomb, deterrence. Now the question is, can a country without nuclear bombs beat a country with nuclear bombs? Well, yes, that happened. US was beaten in Vietnam and Afghanistan, although they have a nuclear bomb. Now, how do you prevent a nuclear power from dropping nuclear bombs? So one of the major things is counter deterrence. Something terrible will happen if you use nuclear bomb. So if you have a country like Russia and a country like the US, if US threatens Russia, the counter deterrence of Russia will prevent the US of using the nuclear bomb. Now, the whole question of nuclear bombing revolves around the question of the first strike. So the one who is going to do the first strike, meaning not throwing one bomb, but launching all the bombs you have that could wipe out the leadership of your enemy. And that scenario was developed in the US. They developed a first strike scenario, there are publications about it, there are analysis of how to conduct a first strike that could wipe out the leadership of Russia. And the Russians reacted to these scenarios by creating an unimaginable scenarios that would come into play and known as the dead hand. So in 1982, the US Pentagon had a plan ready for the first strike. They developed it, they looked into it, the file was elaborated. The Russian response was to envision a fully automated system known as the dead hand, in which a computer alone would issue the order to launch. So even if the Russian leadership was decapitated, computers would memorize the early warning and nuclear attack data, wait out the onslaught, and then order the retaliation without human control. The system would turn over the fate of mankind to computers. The computers would fire all 6,000 nuclear weapons that Russia had. And that system was developed and fully tested in November 1984, 2 years after the Pentagon first strike plan. We live in a crazy world. You can't imagine these things being developed, but here we are. So the question is, who has the motive to use nuclear bombs? Now, obviously, the United States is the only nation in the world that has used nuclear bombs. And the motive was not to bring Japan down, because Japan was already down at the end of 1945. Its motive was to test it and to tell the Russians, who was seen now as the leading counterpower for the US, we have a weapon that could destroy you and you wouldn't recover anymore. But the Russians, after World War II, developed their own arsenal of nuclear bombs. Now, let's look at Israel and Israel's motive for a nuclear bomb. The use of the nuclear bomb and the policy considerations. In 2003, 20 years ago, the Zionist government started a project called Project Daniel. And the purpose of the project was to assess the threat from Iran and other countries. And the conclusion was that Israel should be able to carry out preemptive strikes against nuclear facilities in Iran. And they developed this policy of deliberate ambiguity, means we don't disclose if we have nuclear bombs and how many we have, so that you just know that we are playing with it. And because this idea that a nuclear bomb could destroy Tehran and nuclear facilities in Iran, the Iranians would then back down in supporting Hamas and supporting the liberation movements in Western Asia. It didn't happen. The Iranians were not impressed by Project Daniel, and they just went out to build their infrastructure, military infrastructure, develop supporting the freedom struggle in Palestine. And then within the thinking of Israel, they were thinking, suppose we come into a situation indeed where we are fighting for our survival, which is basically now the case. Would we use nuclear bombs? And the answer is definitely yes. And they have a name for it. They call it the Samson option. The Samson option means that they would use nuclear bombs as a massive retaliation, as a last resort against a country whose military has invaded and or destroyed much of Israel, meaning Hezbollah and Yemen and Hamas, Gaza, obviously Iran. And the Samson option is a reference to the biblical Israeli judge Samson, who pushed apart the pillars of a Philistine temple, not a Palestine temple. Philistine were the people at that time who were, regarded as enemies by the Israelites. So Samson pushed the pillars apart of a Philistine temple, bringing down the roof and killing himself and thousands of Philistines who had captured him, crying out, "Let me die with the Philistines." And basically Netanyahu would say, "Let me die with the Palestinians," and would be able to use nuclear bombs. That is a danger, a real danger. Now, the question now is, these 90 warheads, nuclear warheads in Israel, who is controlling them? Israel or the United States? Israel has 5 submarines. So where are these bombs launched from? From US aircrafts, by plane, by US submarines? Because the US is operating in close cooperation with Israel now in this war. So nobody thinks that Israel would take a decision to launch nuclear weapons without US approval. But what if US approve the use of nuclear bombs by Israel? How would China and Russia perceive that? And would they see this as a license to kill by the US, where the US is saying, you know, we can use a nuclear bomb against our enemy at any time we want. So we are the one deciding if Israel is going to nuke Iran, Hezbollah, Lebanon, etc. And then the question is, what message will Russia and China give in this regard to the US? Would they use their deterrence and say, guys, don't go there, because if you go there, we perceive this as the start of World War III. So then the question would be for the US, are we ready to sacrifice Israel for our own existence? That is a question that will be on the mind of many people in the military circles of the military-industrial complex in the US. Nuking Beirut, Gaza, Damascus, Tehran, you know, what will the effect be? Iran is 80 times bigger than Israel. So which part of Iran are you going to nuke, and which part of the rest of Iran is going to react? Because Iran also has weapons, but not nuclear weapons, but ballistic missiles that could hit Israel. So how will this develop? We don't know, but we live in very dangerous times, as I say again and again. Now, my assessment is that this can happen in a split second, where even not previous planning was done, but just by mad decisions taken by mad people, and even the Israeli military, without consulting the US, might take such a discussion. So it might happen, but what happens, and if this happens, how will the world react? Obviously, you will get a very vehement reactions in the world, mass demonstration, civil wars, stormings of parliament, revolutions. These are real things that could happen, and I'm talking not about 10 years, but about the coming months and years when Israel decides to use its nukes. In 1914, World War I started, and 4 years later, the old empires died and the new European order emerged in just 4 years. In Russia, the Tsar was toppled and the communists came to power in 1917. The Austro-Hungarian Empire dissolved, leading to the formation of the Republic of Austria, the Hungarian Democratic Republic, the Republic of Czechoslovakia, and several Baltic republics, and the cession of land to Poland and Italy. The last Ottoman Sultan, Mehmed VI Fahideddin, stepped down in 1922, and the secular Republic of Turkey was created with Mustafa Kemal Atatürk as the first president. The German Empire ceased to exist with the abdication of Kaiser Wilhelm II and the establishment of the Weimar Republic. World War I brought about these massive changes. Imagine the changes that would come if such a dramatic event were to occur as the use of nuclear bombs. I explained in my episode of yesterday that my rhythm of the videos will change. Tomorrow and the coming days, I won't publish videos. I will do it now on a weekly basis instead of a daily basis. Every Monday around 12 o'clock Central European time, I'll publish a weekly video, and then I go into more issues of decolonial theory. The reason I did a daily one is because of the developments in Palestine, and I wanted to put a decolonial, a DTM, decolonizing the mind gaze to analyze the current development. So I will go back to my original plan of discussing decolonial theory and practice, what it is, and develop it as I develop it in my book. But it's important to know that when actual events requires, I will put out videos before Monday if I think that this would be necessary. And if you want to know if the video is out, you could, subscribe to the channel. So I will talk on Monday about what it means to decolonize the world, what it is, decolonial theory, how it's different from Marxism and liberalism, and how to characterize the phase we are now in the development of decolonial theory, and where are we heading with it. If you want to look up the whole question of Israel and nuclear bombs, you could look at the index of the book, Decolonizing the Mind, on your keywords like Israel or nuclear. You could download the PDF of this PowerPoint. And if you want to support the DTM channel, subscribe to it, share the videos with your friends, family, and colleagues, and encourage them to subscribe. Get involved in discussion groups and make a donation, and look at the website, sanderhero.com, how to do that. Thank you for your attention, and hope to see you Monday next week, and maybe earlier.